are back, and it's unbelievable. It seems like we're starting with obits on every single week when we come back on this, Tim. It's like, I know. And you know, occasionally there'll be one or two people passing, and this week, the last week and a half or 2 weeks since we did the show last, it's just been brutal. I'm just going to run through the names. You tell, and then I'll let you just kind of, you know, go off on some movies and other things. We've got mostly actors and a screenwriter and a singer, but we lost in the last week and a half. We lost Cloris Leachman. We lost Cicely Tyson. We lost Hal Holbrook. We lost Christopher Plummer. Then Jean-Claude Carrière, and then just hours after Jean-Claude Carrière, Mary Wilson from the Supremes. So, man, I don't even know where to start.
I'm going to toss Larry Flint in there too, because Larry
Flint.
That movie, Woody Harrelson, The People versus Larry Flint. Woody Harrelson sort of giving that performance that sort of transitioned him into being a serious actor. Larry Flint, think whatever you want to think of Larry Flint. The fight for basically was the First Amendment fight. With relationship to his sort of pornographic fire. That was an important fight for the First Amendment, and that film captured it fairly well.
And you had to have someone fighting for it who was fighting to say something that was incredibly offensive and odious, because otherwise there is no First Amendment fight. You know, if it's something that everyone agrees with,
it's easy to fight for the thing that everybody agrees with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Christopher Plummer. What can we say about Christopher Plummer? Sound of Music, a film that he did not particularly like.
That's true.
Which is really super interesting. And he did appreciate the film, and he appreciated everyone who appreciated it. But he always, I had a chance to interview him once or twice over 30 years in Hollywood, and he always thought that it was, it approached something like mawkish.
Yeah.
I think is what he used to say. But nevertheless, at 91, and he played so many other extraordinary roles over the course of his long
Insider.
Long career.
He's so good in The Insider.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Most recent, Christopher Plummer was in Knives Out.
I know.
Bumping around some Academy Award not too terribly long ago. Cicely Tyson. Here's the thing about Cicely Tyson. When we think of Cicely Tyson today, and we think of this sort of matriarch of the black acting community, and that's all fine and dandy. Cicely, 90 plus years old when she passes away, but my Cicely Tyson is a young Cicely Tyson. My Cicely Tyson used to hang around with Miles Davis and was a fashion model who used to be in the pages of Ebony magazine, who was incredibly beautiful, sort of representing this very particular look for African American women. My Cicely Tyson was in Sounder and transformed herself from a young woman into an older woman in the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. So I have this Cicely Tyson who was in Bustin' Loose with Richard Pryor.
That's right.
Richard Pryor movie. It's just, I think I got the title right. The one where he's driving her and the kids, that movie.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful. So Cicely Tyson had this sort of wide-ranging career. Our very good friend, Sherman Augustus, played Cicely Tyson's son on a 1990 whatever the hell episode of Touched by an Angel.
Oh.
And on the day that it was announced that she passed, I swear to you, I look up at the television and Touched by an Angel is on, and they cut to Sherman and then Cicely Tyson. I'm like, this is just bizarre. It was just the craziest thing.
So let me tell you my Cicely Tyson story. My mother was an employee of Bank of America. I don't think I've ever told that on the show before. My mother was the customer service person at a Bank of America branch. And Cicely Tyson was one of her customers. And this was in Santa Monica. And I remember my mother my mother was so elated with her. Said she was the kindest, sweetest, most gracious person. And when you do customer service at a bank, you deal with some pretty pissed off people a lot. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah. They need service.
They need service. And my mother being German wasn't always the warmest or fuzziest person. If she wanted to tell you to go pound sand, she would. but she was completely smitten with Cicely Tyson, and they would have chats and they'd have these long talks. And I remember when my mother would, I'm a teenager, and my mother, I'd come home from high school and my mother would come home from work, and she would say, Cicely Tyson came in again today. We had the most lovely chat. And Cicely Tyson, who goes into the bank, presumably to get some kind of business done, and like most people probably wants to get out in 5 to 10 minutes, would sit there and talk to my mother for 20, 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And and they would just have these chats, and it made my mother feel like $1 million. And she was smitten, and she carried herself with such a regal, but not a false thing. She owned the room when she walked in, and she was such an extraordinary icon. So those are the stories I remember.
Man, the nature of her. Cloris Leachman. I met Cloris Leachman, interviewed her so many times over the course of my 30 years working the red carpets and the junket scene here. And she was just about always, even later in her, the funniest person in the room. That sort of Phyllis sharp as a knife wit that she had in the Mary Tyler Moore Show. She's the last one because we lost Mary and we lost Rhoda.
Rhoda,
Valerie Harper. Lou Grant still hanging in there. Who'd have thought? Lou would be the one. And Murray, is Murray still with us? I know Ted Knight we lost a while ago.
Yeah.
And you know what? John Amos is still around.
Yeah.
John Amos is still around.
Yep.
I'm just thinking about that whole cast of the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And, look, when Cloris Leachman got that Academy Award for the Last Picture Show.
Yeah.
Where she was playing that lovelorn woman engaged in perhaps this sort of illicit affair, and it's all shot in black and white. And Cloris Leachman, and there's a whole scene with her, and she's wearing this slip, and she's about to have an assignation with that. And this whole thing's just this powerful, powerful scene, and you'll see why she was nominated for an Academy Award. For one thing, Cloris Leachman was so sexy in that scene. She's sexier than Sybil Shepherd in that movie.
True.
Sybil Shepherd's like 16 in that movie. Cloris Leachman was 40.
I know.
She was 40 already in that scene. Born in I forget, 1927 or something like that. Cloris Leachman. And anyway, just a wonderful, wonderful actress. Bonnie and Clyde, Cloris, again, fantastic. What can you say about Cloris Leachman?
She has some of the funniest scenes in movie history, and it's really amazing when you think of her in High Anxiety, which is just bizarre, and to everything that she did in Young Frankenstein. The outtakes from Young Frankenstein, where Gene Wilder cannot keep it together. He can't keep it together because she is so funny. She's slaying. She's absolutely wiping the floor with Gene Wilder. He cannot keep it together, and all the dumb little things that she does, and she would do it on purpose because she knew what would completely tickle him. And he was my boyfriend. I remember watching that in film school in our comedy class. And I'd never seen it projected before. I'd always seen it on VHS or whatever. And so I'm sitting there with our good friend Mark Sanderson, screenwriter, and my friend Dean, our good friend Dean, also screenwriter. And right when she says he was my boyfriend, Dean loses completely. He loses it. He's completely lost all motor control in his body. He's just sitting there completely in tears. Cannot help himself. And now when I watch the movie, even though it makes me laugh, all I can think of is Dean losing control of all reflexes in his body. And it's even funny. It's even funnier now. It's just even funnier to me. So it's just wonderful stuff. It's just wonderful stuff. Anyway,
Hal Holbrook. I know everybody talking about Hal Holbrook. Hal Holbrook also passed, 95 years old. And people talk about Hal Holbrook, and everybody remembers that Mark Twain thing that he did for 50, 60 years. Yeah. It was great. Saw it in St. Louis in the 80s. Me and the wife went to see that at the Muni. sort of this beautiful outside amphitheater in the 80s. Hal Holbrook doing that thing back then.
Yeah.
Of course, he was married to Dixie Carter for years. Here's the thing about Hal Holbrook, and you think about Watergate, All the President's Men.
Yeah.
And we think about Dustin, and we think about Robert Redford, and we think about who played the Bill Bradley, got nominated for what's his name?
Yeah.
And we think about him, but Hal Holbrook was Deep Throat.
Yeah.
In that movie, and I got to tell you, those scenes with him in those shadows and that voice.
Yeah,
and it was just he was fantastic in that movie. People forget that was him. That was Hal Holbrook playing Deep Throat. And he was wonderful. I just love me some Hal Holbrook.
I'll tell you something too. Here's a little remembered Hal Holbrook performance, because it's kind of a minor film, but not really. It's a little bit of a cult following. Peter Hyam's Star Chamber with Michael Douglas.
Oh yeah.
Hal Holbrook did in that film what he did in All the President's Men, what he did in all of his performances, which is he brought a density of gravitas in just a few short scenes that makes the movie. Hal Holbrook never starred in a movie. Hal Holbrook was a movie star who never starred in anything. He was always a supporting guy. He was always the other guy, but he was the guy who brought the goods in. He was the ultimate supporting actor. If you put Hal Holbrook in a movie, he would make everything around him better. And, it's just so natural, so gifted, so understated, and really an actor that people should study. I really think you study Hal Holbrook's performances, you will learn so much.
Yeah, for 50 years, we wondered who Deep Throat was. I always said it was Hal Holbrook.
I know. Jean-Claude Carrière. Tim, I championed Jean-Claude Carrière for a Career Achievement Award from LAFCA for a few years. Never carried, there are just too many great people out there. He got his Oscar. He got his honorary Oscar just recently, I think a year or two ago, and finally got that recognition. Had been Oscar nominated, certainly. Carrière was an ace screenwriter in Italian, in Spanish, in French, and in English. That is just extraordinary. Worked with Buñuel. Is there a favorite Carrière screenplay of yours by chance?
Well, the Discreet Charm of the Bourgeois, but The Unbearable Lightness.
There it is. Mine too. Yes.
It was just because it floats like you just would not believe. It's just this absolutely beautiful screenplay. And it's funny because, there's not a lot of dialogue in that movie. And it's not a lot so in reading that, and I read that screenplay, I don't know, what's that, the 80s, late 80s, early 90s? What is that? Like that, right?
Yeah.
So when I read that screenplay, it was like reading a novel almost. So it's just absolutely beautiful. Yeah. The Unbearable Lightness.
That's it. Unbearable Lightness of Being is, I think, by far his best, the great Phil Kaufman film. And then, lastly, Mary Wilson, not an actress, but certainly a huge entertainment industry figure. I have often said, even though we look at Diana Ross as the front face of the Supremes wouldn't have been the Supremes without Mary Wilson. Agree or not?
Which is absolutely true. No. That's absolutely true. It took the three of them to create the thing that was the Supremes. Diana Ross, as this sort of singular entity that went on to have that sort of singular career, absolutely. Both as an actress and as a singer and all of that, sure. But you don't have the Supremes without all three of those women, including Mary Wilson. And to be honest with you, you don't get Diana Ross without the Supremes.
It's true.
So you got to have the Supremes to get Diana Ross, and you can't have the Supremes without Mary Wilson and Florence. So these things, it's one of those things of where it's like it's all so integral.
Yeah.
And thank goodness that we were around to experience it.
And, a few others that we didn't actually mention on the show. We should mourn Dustin Diamond as well. Famous basically only for one role as Screech, but quite a role and taken far too soon. Cancer is just so wretched. And Leon Smith,
only 40 years old.
I know.
Oh man, Leon from St. Louis, from East St. Louis. Actually, Leon was from East St. Louis. He and his brother Michael. And of course during their Olympics boxing run in the middle '70s.
I remember that Leon Spinks fight. I remember when he beat Ali, and he was an old fat Ali. It was, but he beat him.
Yeah.
And Larry King, we lost as well recently. Which Larry King's kind of been on death's door for quite a while. But anyway, so we've lost. They're dropping like crazy right now. But anyway, on to other things. Golden Globes. Mank with 6 Golden Globe nominations leading the field, and then 12 Critics' Choice nominations also leading that field. Is Mank an Oscar frontrunner, or is it going to be kind of another Fincher, Oscar event where he comes in with something like Benjamin Button and gets a ton of nominations and walks away without anything?
I think the only thing that he really, really, really has a shot at is that screenplay.
For his dad,
which of the screenplay for his dad. I think there's a little bit now. There will be those our good friend Ray Green who will object to that based on the idea that most of the screenplay is kind of BS.
Yeah,
confabulation. But on the other hand, it's just this original screenplay, and it's okay with me that it's sort of confabulation. It doesn't pretend to be any sort of a actual biography or anything like that. So that doesn't bug me about it. I like some of the ideas and some of the notions that Gary Oldman chews up the scenery, but I think that screenplay is about the only one that it really has a shot at.
Well, it's going to be interesting. A lot of interesting stuff. I think the most interesting thing about the Golden Globes, we rip on the Globes a lot, but here's where all of my criticisms of the Globes actually wind up being meaningful, because the Globes nominated 3 women in the directors category. One of whom is Regina King, by the way, we should point out, in her directing debut. That is not a small thing. And I know some people out there are saying, oh, the Globe is just trying to be PC. They're trying, they got criticized for, not enough women in the directing class, not enough people of color. And they're trying to be PC. Let me tell you why that doesn't fly. Because the Globes have never given a damn what anyone thinks about them. The Hollywood Foreign Press.
Because everybody mocks them.
Everyone mocks them. People have mocked the Hollywood Foreign Press for decades, ever since they gave Pia Zadora that award that doesn't exist anymore. Look, the Hollywood Foreign Press is a very particular group. I've criticized them, even though we have friends who have in the past belonged to it. But the one thing about them is they care only about who is going to look good on the red carpet and with whom can I get my picture taken. It's kind of that shallow. So when the Hollywood Foreign Press, this is where all the deficits kind of come back. When they actually nominate 3 women in the directing category, one thing for certain. They believe those women belong there.
Yeah.
Now that's a meaningful thing to me.
Yeah, that's not a gimme.
That's not a gimme. This isn't just doing somebody a favor. These are our special needs directors who need a little. No. Those 3 women absolutely belong there in the eyes of the Hollywood Foreign Press. And that's meaningful to me. I want people to understand this is not a political correctness move. This is not trying to sort of be overly woke. This is a moment. This is a really interesting turning point. And we've always said, if you give talented people the chance to make their movies, they will be rewarded for them. Finally, Hollywood
on the strength of the work.
On the strength of the work. That's it.
The promising young woman, Emerald. Is it Fennell? Emerald.
I think so. I believe so. Woman. Yeah, we'll all know how to pronounce that soon.
Soon. Regina King for One Night in Miami. Chloe Zhao for Nomadland. A Francis McDormand film. So that's and then there's David Fincher for Mank and Aaron Sorkin for Trial of Chicago 7, which is still odd to me.
That's the weird one.
Nominated and particularly when the small acts films, as a group or individually, or they're over in television.
Yeah.
When all of these movies are on anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
Don't want to go down that rabbit hole again.
Anyway, so that to me is a significant turning point, and I think it's a good one because what it says is that we are beginning to get to a place where we're looking at the talent and we're looking at the achievement, and we're just gonna reward the talent and the achievement. And for the people who greenlight the movies and finance them, it says, stop worrying so much about the ethnicity of the person, the gender of the person. Can a woman direct a man's film? Can a man direct a woman's film? Can white people direct black stories? Can black people direct white stories? Can Asian stories direct his? Don't worry about any of that. Talent is talent, man.
Look, it took a moment of some drum pounding.
Yeah.
All of this started 6-7 years ago. And all kinds of machinations with the academy and adding this and doing that and all kinds of all 5, 6, 7 years ago, all of that. So over the course of those years, what did we see happen? We saw some films, your Barry Jenkins films, your Black Panthers, Ryan Coogler films, and about 3 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago, exactly what you said started happening. Getting in greenlighting suites, all kinds of movies got greenlighted. Your Nomadland and this and that, all got to agree with these people in it. So now, even if you take a look at, again, in the Golden Globes, best performance by an actor in a motion picture drama, you have Riz Ahmed, who is an Arab man. You got the late Chadwick Boseman for a fantastic appointment. Yeah. You got Gary Oldman, and you got Tahir Rahim for the more tradition. Another. So you have this sort of net, and I've seen all of these films. You've seen all of these films. These are all perfectly reasonable. Not just reasonable nominations, and frankly, if they had more than 5 categories here, you could add another 5 nominations to that, again, of all kinds of people, and that would be perfectly reasonable too. You have the performances in films like Minori. Yeah. So actually, anyway, we can go on and on and on. So, and I've said what we have here is all kinds of fantastic stuff that we can nominate for Academy Awards.
I've said this for years. Talent is already diverse, and if you're concerned about diversity, chase the talent, and diversity will follow. And you're you kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You get a much richer tapestry of stories and experiences and things you've never seen before, and you're rewarding people who genuinely deserve to be rewarded. So. I am heartened by a lot of this. Let's jump into some new movies. I want to start off with Freaky. Tim, did you see Freaky?
I don't know if I saw Freaky or not.
Oh my gosh. Freaky's the body switching serial killer movie with Vince Vaughn and Catherine Newton. It's absolutely terrific.
Oh yeah, the big thing, the body swapping.
Yes, it's so freaking great. And I'm talking on Film Week this week about another Catherine Newton movie, which is kind of another sort of Groundhog Day thing. She's very sweet in it, but she's so good in this. Freaky is a great movie. It is a comedy horror film. It's one of the best comedy horror films I've ever seen. It's so much better than almost anything that any of the Scream films for that matter. Basically, Vince Vaughn is a serial killer. Catherine Newton is a high school girl, and for reasons that you have to see the film to understand, they wind up switching bodies. So suddenly you've got an 18-year-old girl in the body of Vince Vaughn running around scared to death that the serial killer now occupying her 18-year-old high school girl body is going to kill her family and everyone else. And it's just to watch them switch is the funniest thing in the world. Watching Vince Vaughn play an 18-year-old girl and watching Catherine Newton just completely go unhinged as a homicidal lunatic is so much fun. I can't say enough about this movie. It's a blast. It's got some fun extras, deleted scenes, some featurettes and stuff on it. But really, the movie is the whole thing. And it's another, Blumhouse hit it out of the park with this. You also get a Movies Anywhere code. I'm probably going to watch this again this week as soon as Film Week is over. It's just so much fun.
So that wicked high concept horror
so
comedy
good
stuff is just
so good.
Do that stuff anymore. I did see Tesla, the Michael Almerita, directed and written by him, story of Nikola Tesla, starring Ethan Hawke and Eve Hewson and a few others. And I don't know. I love the historical story of all of that. Michael Almerita always does these things in sort of interesting ways. He did a version of Hamlet, sort of contemporary version of Hamlet with Ethan Hawke some 20 odd years ago or whatever, and a pretty wicked sort of vampire movie, sort of contemporary vampire movie back in the 90s too. It kind of does the same thing with this business here. But I don't know. This is as much about Westinghouse and a whole bunch of other characters here. Thomas Edison, played by Cal McLaughlin in this movie, as it is Tesla. But it's a sort of interesting little historical walk through the life of the guy that Elon Musk named that car company after. If you wonder why he picked that name, now you know why.
Did you by chance see the Current War, the other one that had Nicholas Hoult playing Tesla?
Yeah, I saw that one too, and again, who was that? Was it Michael?
Benedict Cumberbatch played Thomas Edison in that one.
Yeah,
and Michael Shannon played Westinghouse, and
that's who it was. Yeah, that story too. Yeah, you have to tell all these stories together because those AC/DC wars, it involved all of these historical figures, and it's so interesting.
Got another one here called Dreamland. Gosh, I wanted to like Dreamland so much, and it was okay. Kind of a Bonnie and Clyde-ish thing set in the Dust Bowl. Margot Robbie is a kind of the Bonnie figure whose Clyde has been killed, and she winds up effectively seducing this young kid, and played by Finn Cole. It kind of tries to be Bonnie and Clyde. It tries to be a little bit of a East of Eden thing. It sort of tries to nod to a lot of that James Deany stuff, and I don't know that it really pulls it off, but boy, it really gives it a college try. It's beautifully shot. Margot Robbie is very, very good. I just think the narrative is a little bit thin, but it's nicely done. It's nicely done. Finn Cole and Margot Robbie in Dreamland, and that is from Paramount, available on a Blu-ray with a digital copy on it.
I saw A Call to Spy for Film Week back when it opened, and I'm pretty sure that back when it opened, they felt like they might have been on and it's a fairly decent movie, that they might have been on I don't know, some kind of an awards season run. It kind of sort of.
Well, it's World War II. It's World War II.
Yeah.
It's spies. Yeah.
Lydia Dean Pilcher directing this film. It's a true story of these women who were called to spy by the British spy service, the sort of nascent British spy service, including one particular woman, a woman named Noor Khan, who was an Indian woman, and she was actually sent behind enemy lines to spy. And Virginia Hall, a real figure who sort of ran this series of spies. It's an interesting story. It's intent on telling the story of these women. So sometimes the movie sort of pauses in the sort of John le Carré sort of spy thriller thing that's going on to make sure that we know how heroic these women are. And that's, that sort of undermines it a little bit. But I get why they want to do that. These are unknown women who did these amazing things. And, they want to make sure that we understand who they are. But it does kind of just tamp down the ride that we're on. Like I said, a sort of John le Carré thing, which these women were engaged in. I mean, they were engaged in some straight up, no kidding around, behind the lines spy.
We also have Synchronic, which I think is a really interesting movie that I don't think got enough attention, frankly. It's from Welgo, and it's interesting. Anthony Mackie and Jamie Dornan play a couple of paramedics in The Big Easy, and which suddenly they get drawn into. There's this really messy stuff going on, a series of these really, really horrible accidents, and it winds up having not having a normal, natural, existential explanation to it. It winds up dragging them into kind of a really fascinating metaphysical adventure. I'll just say it's a thinking person science fiction film. You should know that going in that it's a sci-fi film. And but here's the thing: I kind of Jamie Dornan is so good in this, and he's been such a that chiseled Irish. Those chiseled Irish good looks of his. And just last night, and I'm going to, this'll podcast will go live after I've already done Film Week, but just last night I watched him in this week's comedy, which is the new Kristen Wiig film. She and Annie Mumolo wrote. It's their first screenplay since Bridesmaids. And he's the guy in it. And he's ridiculous. He's so freaking funny. I've never seen him do comedy before. Jamie Dornan is stone cold hilarious in this thing. And now I can't go back to something like Synchronic and take him seriously because he's just he's a goofball now. It's weird. I don't know how that happened.
I love those. You never know with those guys. You just never know.
I know.
Diane Lane and Kevin Costner together again. This time in Let Him Go. Another film that I saw pop up on some list, I saw this film again for Film Week, and it was a pretty damn good drama. It's just a straight up old school sort of Western set contemporarily. Actually set in the 1960s, which is really good because it eliminates things like cell phones and whatnot. And what we have is this family, Kevin Costner and his wife, and they have a son. His son is married to this young woman, and they have a young grandson. Fairly early in the movie, their son dies. This leaves them with their daughter-in-law and their grandson. The daughter-in-law gets swept up in a relationship with another man, and that man spirits her and the grandson off into the middle of the Dakotas. And Diane Lane just don't like the way it smells, and she decides to go and visit her grandson, and she feels like it stinks even more. And what I love about this movie, that it all really pivots on Diane Lane's character, this grandmother. That let him go thing, that is the title of this film. That's a thing that she says in this film, and she's going to get her grandson back come hell or high water. And this movie has that kind of hell or high water sort of dynamic as this sort of family, out in the hills of the Dakotas, and Kevin Costner and Diane Lane and this Native American man. So this is a pretty damn good crunchy ass Western, as Kevin Costner has been known to do every now and again. We think about Dances with Wolves from 150 years ago. I saw that the other day. 1990, that film.
Yeah.
And we poke at that film now for a whole lot of various different reasons. I don't. I still like that movie. And Kevin Costner also gave us, to my mind, my favorite rendition of Wyatt Earp.
I agree.
His Wyatt Earp is a straight drama and is fantastic.
I agree. And I love the 4-hour Dances with Wolves director's cut, which I saw at the Grand Rex in Paris many years ago. It's 4 hours with an intermission, and it's an even better film because it doesn't whitewash the relationship between him and the Sioux. There's a great voiceover moment that was not in the Oscar-winning cut, the theatrical cut, where he says, "And yet, there are bridges, there are divides between us that cannot be bridged." And it sort of goes into a little bit of a darker place. But anyway, Yellow Rose, sweet little film that didn't get enough love. It's kind of the same plot in some respects as Wild Rose, which was the Jessie Buckley movie where she's, Jessie Buckley's an Irish woman who sings country, and she's trying to make it as a country star. Yellow Rose is a little bit more homebound. But it's about this Filipina who in Texas who wants to break into singing country and bridge that cultural divide here. And it's really sweet. Eva Noblezada, who stars, is an absolute revelation. She's just beautiful. This isn't getting a lot of awards love, but I really hope that audiences find it because it's a super, super sweet film. And I just love it. I think it's got some. And Lea Salonga, no longer the young Miss Saigon Broadway star, but she's fantastic in it as well. And I interviewed her years ago, and what a wonderful interview she was.
Yeah, fantastic. Love that movie. Breach is one of those movies where Bruce Willis is the biggest thing on the cover, but the smallest thing in the movie. He's in 6 scenes of the movie, in the movie, but he's the biggest thing on the cover of the movie. And to a certain extent, this is kind of a fun film set in space. On this ship that's left Earth, and they're going to a sort of a new colony out in the middle of nowhere, and there are all kinds of reasons why they have to do that, and something wacky is going on the ship, and people are getting taken out, and what's going to happen. This movie, I swear to God, it looks like they made it in the basement of a junior high in Pacoima.
Because they did.
Yeah, because I'm certain they did. They just painted everything, like a dark green, and put receding lights in every corner.
Yep.
And they're just sort of walking around, and every now and again they sit in something that looks like a recliner that we're supposed to believe is like the captain's chair. And I'm like, no, that's a lazy boy. That's not a captain's chair.
It's just like The Expanse. You shoot it somewhere, and you make it look all techie, and then somehow some visual effects kids with a few computers in Karachi will send you all of the space footage. You cut it together, and people think it's in space.
And that's what it is. And what the heck, and then Bruce Willis just blows the whole damn thing up. But you know what? I've been poking at Bruce for a long time now. Frankly, sometimes these movies are kind of fun. I don't know why Bruce never, ever goes serious anymore.
I don't
Maybe
either.
he doesn't get offered any roles. You know, even Nick Cage, every blue moon, you know, he'll pull out a Joe or an
Sure will.
something, you know. I like that. But Bruce just lives over here in this space and gets his couple of $1 million paycheck, and I guess he's just not concerned with it anymore.
Ammonite has gotten a little bit of awards attention. Francis Lee's new film. So here's where I come down on Ammonite. Ammonite stars Kate Winslet as the famous 19th century British fossil expert Mary Anning, who led a very, very difficult and sad life. She is significant in the paleontology archaeology world because of the fossils that she was able to find and make public. She was a little bit famous at the time, but she never made a dime really off any of her work. Never married, never had children, never had a family, you know, just really a very, very sad life. And this sort of theorizes, because Francis Lee is a gay man and a gay filmmaker, and he sort of, these are the stories that he tells. He imagines her story as a lesbian romance. And it's a completely fabricated story. There's no evidence that this ever existed. No indication Mary Anning was gay. Quite the contrary. But this is his interpretation of it, and he's entitled to that as long as we sort of qualify it. That said, kind of. That said, as good as these performances are, Saoirse Ronan is wonderful in this too.
Yeah.
I still think that this story was better told more faithfully and more artfully in Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I don't really see the point for So.
Yeah, which you know, that the whole gay thing is absolutely appropriate. I don't like making anything up that it isn't necessary to make up in these sort of historical, semi biographical pictures. You know, I just don't care for it. What can I say? Saoirse Ronan is absolutely exquisite in the film, as she just always seems to be, though. So you know, I won't be mad about that. Wild Mountain Time was one that folks was talking about too. John Patrick Shanley directing and writing. Just one of these sort of star-crossed lover kind of things. You have Emily Blunt, and you got Jamie Dornan again, and John Hamm in the lead of this thing. And it's just sort of this argument between these two families about this land, and this sort of romance develops between it all. It was lovely. I think again, a lot of folks figured we might be talking about it during this particular period, this sort of award period, but it kind of just sort of like slipped off everybody's radar. It's good, but not great.
Got a couple of films here from Indican, both of which are going to be in theaters, and may be in some theaters at the moment, but they are coming out on DVD as well for the remainder of this month. And so wanted to kind of put those on people's radar. One of them is The Bra. The Bra is actually really, really quite incredibly funny. It is a clever. Oh, how would I even describe this? It's kind of an inverted Cinderella movie, with underwear. I don't even know how to even go about it. It's almost the kind of film that used to be like a classic Italian film. A classic Italian comedy. It feels like something that would have been made with Marcello Mastroianni in the 1968 or something. Veit Helmer is the director. Stars Paz Vega, Denis Lavant, Mickey Manojlovic, I guess is how you pronounce her name. But anyway, really, really sweet foreign language film. I don't know what else to tell you about it. It's kind of a. It's about a guy who's obsessed with a woman's bra to where it becomes like the Cinderella slipper for him to find his dream girl. I don't know any other way to sort of describe the plot. That's just what it is. And it's just kind of crazy and fun and weird and silly. It's called The Bra. Check it out. The much more significant film is Amigo Skate Cuba. This is a great. I didn't even realize skateboards are illegal in Cuba. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah. for whatever reason, it's like a sign of rebellion and capitalism and something, counter-revolutionary, whatever. Anyway, I guess I looked at who rides skateboards in America and thought we don't need those people here. Like the skateboard is responsible or whatever. But this is about skate culture, underground skate culture in Cuba, and how there are Americans in Miami who smuggle it in like contraband and now are working to kind of build a skate park in Havana so that these guys have, somewhere to sort of go openly. And I don't know if it's just tolerated now to some degree, but it really is. The idea of skateboarding as political protest is totally fascinating to me. And I think it's a really sharp film. Let's see what else we got here.
The Climb was one that I saw for Film Week, which was an interesting film that folks were talking about at the time that it came out. A few of these films are these sort of like buddy films. So Michael Angelino Covino, and who's the director of this and co-writer with his buddy Kyle Marvin, and they're both in the film. And it does involve this long sort of bike ride, but what's basically happened is one of them slept with the other one's fiance. And obviously this creates a sort of rift in this long and deep relationship that they've had over many, many years. But it's sort of an interesting thing. It's one of those films where basically as they go on these long backwards, they have these conversations and remembrances and all this kind of stuff. So it's just about this relationship, but mostly it's just people talking. I love that George Wendt shows up in this film. Haven't seen
isn't that
George
great?
Wendt nearly enough over the years. Love me some George Wendt.
Well, Michelangelo Covino, who co-wrote and directed and co-stars with Kyle Marvin, who co-wrote it as well, you can tell that the guys who are in it are the guys who wrote it. This is one of those movies. It's like Kristen Wiig and Annie Mumolo, right? They're doing this shtick on the screen where you're like, the actors could not possibly be this is dialogue those people wrote. They did this. They improvised this. They worked this out while they were writing it, and now they're performing it. You can just see that perfect fluidity between the process and the execution. What I like about this film are the scenes where there are scenes it's just one long take, and there's some very elegant, there's some very kind of smart camera work that moves very judiciously to kind of capture the rhythm of a performance in one take. I really appreciated that. So yeah, The Climb, sharp little indie. We've got, let's see what else here. I'll knock out two here real quickly. The one that I just cannot abide is Love, Weddings, and Other Disasters.
I queued that one up.
It's just absolutely terrible. Dennis Dugan was fun on TV as Richie Brockelman, and then he started directing really bad Adam Sandler movies and Problem Child and all this stuff. And his movies are just so tacky and tasteless. This is just, it really is. It's just an absolutely horrible, horrible movie. Diane Keaton in this movie, I don't even know how to even, in any kind of a tasteful way, describe this. I mean, first of all, it's about wedding planning, and, Jeremy Irons is this really, veteran wedding planner. And Maggie Grace is this like up and coming wedding planner. And then this is like oh gosh, I want to say this is kind of like a Nancy Meyers movie that's completely gone off the rails. and in another sense, here's a better way of putting it. So it's like it's like if Gary Marshall and Nancy Meyers were to have made a movie together and it just went totally wrong. Everything that could possibly have gone wrong, that's what goes on in this movie. The romances don't work. What's supposed to be funny isn't funny. And there are blind jokes associated with Diane Keaton's character that I just find so shockingly tasteless. I can't believe that they wound up in the movie, but there it is. There it is. It's just foolishness. So Wander Darkly.
That Diego Luna film. I saw that.
Diego Luna and Sienna Miller. Written and directed by Tara Mila, I guess is how you pronounce her name. I'm surprised this didn't get a lot more love too. I think this is a really, really interesting film with an amazing performance from Sienna Miller. I think she is really, really sharp. And, Diego Luna is always interesting. I would never put those two together, but because for some reason I always think of him as being like a kid. But, I thought this was really, really, really interesting. It's a very unusual romance. and it doesn't go where I thought it would go. I just found it really, really fascinating and kind of almost Tarkovsky-like in some weird way. What did you think?
The same thing, and when we think about they have this couple in this genre, we think about some of the films like that Vanessa Kirby film that we've all been talking about.
Yeah, the recent one.
Yeah, that sort of lives in that territory. Tara Millay, I think is the way you say her name, directed and wrote this film. It's really, really good. Totally appreciated. Wander Darkly. Survival skills was a sort of interesting, and we have a lot of films that are directed and written by original concepts directed and written by. This is a person named Quinn Armstrong, directed and written by, which is really, really interesting that over the course of this past year and a half, there've been a whole lot of films that are not necessarily adaptations of, books or anything like that, just a film that a writer-director came up with and wrote and directed, and they made these films with some interesting sort of ideas and concepts to them. Some of them pretty sort of high concept. This one is about the idea is that this video training tape from the 80s is found. And it's a survival skills training tape that this guy uses who is this cop. He's going to be like this perfect cop. And he uses this survival skills training tape, and he gets involved in this whole sort of domestic violence thing. And Stacy Keach is doing the voiceover. You kind of get the feeling that Stacy Keach is doing the voiceover of this guy from back in the day, and it's really sort of it's interesting the way this goes. It doesn't work completely and totally, but as a concept, it's sort of wicked and cool, and I kind of dug it. So yeah, and again, a writer director kind of film. Quinn Armstrong. Survival skills.
Got a couple of animated ones here. Really a fascinating thing here is Batman Soul of the Dragon. So I'm going to cut to the chase here. Bruce Lee's in a Batman movie. This is animated, of course. It's from the Elseworlds kind of alternate universe thing in the DC universe, and it's set in the 1970s, and what they're trying to do is sort of, I guess, recontextualize a lot of these DC stories and just kind of give us interesting backdrops. It's like what we do with Shakespeare when we set Shakespeare in, the 19th century or the 20th century and stuff like that. They're trying to give an elevated appreciation to all of the different ways that you can depict these various DC characters. And I appreciate that. I don't think you have to be orthodox about it at all. So it is very interesting. You get all this martial arts stuff in here, and Bruce Lee and Bruce Wayne, and I find it an interesting experiment. I don't know if it is completely successful, but I like the idea that they're doing this and that they're trying to do some of these things. And, it reminds me like a little bit of like a serious version of what they did on Scooby-Doo back when, Scooby-Doo was doing all those celebrity things like Laurel and Hardy and the Three Stooges and the Harlem Globetrotters. And they would, all that stuff was awfully fun. So this is a little bit more of a serious take on that. I'm good with that. And then, Mark Osborne's The Little Prince, which is on Blu-ray and deserves a better telling than this. It is very nicely done. It feels like it's trying to be faithful to the story. We haven't had a proper animated Little Prince really ever as a feature film. There was only the musical, the Lerner and Loewe musical with, Bob Fosse as the snake from 1970, 71, something like that. Yeah. 72, somewhere in that neighborhood. And, I think there's a lot going on here, but there's also kind of an additional frame story to this that I could have done without. In any case, it has a lot going for it. It was a Paramount film. I think it wound up on Netflix, not in theaters. But in any case, not entirely successful, but hard to not recommend, especially with the voice talent, which is amazing. I mean, Jeff Bridges, Rachel McAdams, Benicio del Toro, Ricky Gervais, Paul Giamatti, Paul Rudd, Marion Cotillard. It's all over the map. It's fantastic.
Oh, Albert Brooks, a little old Bud Cort in that movie. Bud Cort. So it's kind of cool.
Yep, good stuff. Let's see.
Louis Van Beethoven. I'll pop it because I happen to see that one for Film Week too, and because I saw it for Film Week, and I was like and I did all this research, and sure enough, Ludwig van Beethoven, as a young child, a young prodigy, was called Louis.
Yep.
He was called Louis in his immediate family. He was referred to as Louis in the press. When notices were given for him. This movie bounces around in time. We kind of begin with him as the older. He's deaf and he's old and he's riding around with his nephew, going from place to place as he reminisces about his life and his childhood. His alcoholic father, who was his sort of first teacher, and everything. We started like bouncing around with him from the time that he's about 6 or 7 years old through his teen years and being a young man and it's really kind of a comprehensive, although a little bit scatological look at the life of a guy I had no idea they called him Louis back in the day.
Very true. It's a good one. I had a Beethoven class in college. Hardest class I had in college. I kid you not. I got a C in it, barely. And honestly, it was so hard, but I loved it. Professor Winter used to go up and he'd play Beethoven on the piano at the front of the class. You know, it was in the music department. I should have known better than to go do that. You would have done fine. You have a great ear for this stuff. You come from a musical family, but
the history of all of that. That's my brother Robert. He would have known all of that.
Oh, dude, this is what the tests in the class were like. And by the way, I was in the class with a friend of mine that I had worked with, you know, who was a musician. Like she had a band with her sister, still does. They still perform all over town. She and her kids now, right? I mean, she's a rocker. She's a musician. She's got a great ear. And our test would be like this. Winter would go up to the front of the class. He'd sit down at the piano. He'd bang something out for like 30 seconds. And then he would say, now I want you to write. What piece of music I'm saying, what piece of music did that come from? Where in that piece of music? In other words, what movement and what part of the movement? And what does it represent symbolically and literally in the life of Beethoven? And I'm sitting there, I'm looking up here and I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you seriously kidding me? Like, this is what I got. I'm going to fail. I'm going to totally fail. Somehow, by the skin of my teeth, I passed that class. I don't know how. I made stuff up. I don't know. But those tests were insane.
I love it.
Okay, got a couple here. Major Arcana is a cool little indie film by a filmmaker named Josh Melrod. Keep your eye open. A lot of skill there. This is kind of a it's kind of a part backwoods noir, kind of part backwoods indie drama, a little bit of Cassavetes thrown in here. Takes place in Vermont, in a part of Vermont I didn't know existed. I always think of Vermont as like this total kind of, you know, like people in their vacation homes and whatnot. You don't think of Vermont as sort of being very backwoods, but there is a part of Vermont that is very, very backwoods. And this is very, very blue collar. It's about this guy named Dink, who is a carpenter with all kinds of baggage. And he meets a woman who also has baggage. Her name is Sierra. So they are Dink and Sierra. How about that? And they have, not going to give it away. There's a history and there's a future to this relationship. Mm-hmm. And you're watching two people who are a little bit damaged, but who are still strong, lean on each other and try to work things out. And the Vermont setting is pastoral and yet hostile at the same time. It's a very smart little movie. So keep your eye on Josh Melrod as a filmmaker. And then lastly here on the new film front, Random Acts of Violence is a Shudder original. It's good little kind of slashery, horror-y, thriller-y thing from Jay Baruchel directing it, the actor Jay Baruchel. It's a little too close to. Let's see. Let me put it this way: the relationship of murder to comic strips is a little problematic for me. I don't want people kind of like taking undue inspiration from what's being suggested here. But as far as a movie about, you know, slasher killers and you know, all of the how you catch them and go after them and whatnot, I mean, it balances being exploitive and being serious pretty well. So Random Acts of Violence is the movie, a Shudder original. Let's see, Tim. I want to go through a bunch of kinos here real quickly that have piled up. Just weigh in as needed. And some of this, the first one, movie. I'm so glad that this is out on Blu-ray finally from Kino. A Man Called Adam, which is an absolute. We're talking about Cicely Tyson, and I'm so glad that this came out because this is really this is a wonderful performance of hers in an incredible cast. This is a great kind of tribute to jazz and everything that jazz really represents in American culture. Sammy Davis Jr. is the star, but you also have Louis Armstrong. You got Mel Torme. I mean, Louis Armstrong and Mel Torme alone, I'm done.
Are you kidding me? Frank is in that movie. Most of the
Ozzie Davis,
that Brat Pack. You got Peter Lawford over there. You got Ozzy over there. It's Jeanette Dubois, who, of course, we think of Jeanette Dubois, Good Times. Lived across the hall in that movie. She was a singer before she was anything. Fantastic cast in that movie.
It is an absolutely fantastic film. Sammy plays a trumpeter, and it gets a little stereotypical in the musician with all their demons narrative, but it's really, really good. And here's
one of those kind of man with the golden arms kind of thing.
That's it. And who directed this?
Leo Penn.
Leo Penn, Sean Penn's dad.
Yeah.
Who passed not too long ago, but who directed a lot of great TV. Directed Chris, by the way, some people don't even really realize this. Leo directed an episode of Magnum PI that Chris was in, where Chris starts with a Vietnam flashback with Chris in the Vietnam flashback. Magnum PI, the Tom Selleck Magnum PI. Also directed the Enemy Within episode of Star Trek, where Kirk splits into two people, and there's the psycho Kirk and then the indecisive Kirk, and they need each other. That was Leo who directed that. Got three westerns here. Man of the East with Terrence Hill, Thomas Hunter, Henry Silva, and Dan Duryea in The Hills Run Red. And then Wings of the Hawk with Van Heflin and Julia Adams, which was a 3D Western at the time. These are all really strictly B-level Westerns, but they're fun and they're worth checking out. There's a great commentary on Man of the East with Alex Cox, who all he seems to do these days is commentaries. He also does a commentary.
That was one of those Italian jobs, right?
Man of the East. Was it? I guess it was. Harry Carey and the people in it, Terrence Hill and Harry Carey. It's not an Italian cast per se, but I guess it is dubbed. Anyway, Alex Cox does a commentary on that. Alex Cox does a commentary on Hills Run Red. And then Wings of the Hawk has a commentary with Jeremy Arnold and a great 20-minute commentary with 3D expert Mike Ballou and a Woody Woodpecker short. And then, right. And then let's see here. We got a couple of other. Well, there's just a ton of stuff here. John Frankenheimer's The Train with Burt Lancaster is also out on Blu-ray from Kino. Absolutely amazing. They have the vintage John Frankenheimer commentary is on here, along with another one by filmmaker and historian Steve Mitchell. And there's an isolated
great cast
score
of that too. Paul Scofield, John Moreau. Oh man.
There's an isolated score. The Maurice Jarre score is isolated. Paul Scofield is amazing in this as well. Really one of Frankenheimer's very, very best, if not Frankenheimer's best film, frankly. A little bit more on the exploitation end is Buried Alive, which is not Frank Darabont's finest moment, but it's Frank Darabont, and you see him coming along. This is from 1990. This is before Shawshank Frank Darabont. And, you can see him kind of putting it together. Jennifer Jason Leigh and Tim Matheson, William Atherton, Hoyt Axton, it's a respectable cast. Has an interesting commentary on it by Bryce Reisman. So, see it if you are a Frank Darabont fan. From Something Weird and Kino comes the hilarious Inagagi, which by the way, I didn't even realize this, and they brag about it on the packaging. The U.S. Trade Commission banned this movie in 1933, which was right about when the production code went into effect. They banned this for some bizarre, strange reason. It's kind of a pseudo documentary. It's like a fake documentary set in Africa, and it's I guess because people actually believed it. You know, that this was like the movie was a hoax, that they felt that it was like a hoax on the public or something. I don't know. But in any case, the idea of going into Africa and finding a gorilla worshiping cult is so ridiculous that if anybody believed this in 1933, then, you know, you deserve what you get. The War with Elijah Wood, a very young Elijah Wood and Kevin Costner, is a wonderful movie that did not get enough love at the time. John Avnet directed this. Basically a coming-of-age film during the summer of 1970 when Vietnam is raging. It's one of Kevin Costner's best performances. Elijah Wood is so touching. It's just, and that's all it is. It's about a kid coming of age, you know, with these awful other kids that pick on him and his family. And Mayor Winningham is fantastic. Lucas Black is great. It's just it's a wonderful, nostalgic, very touching film. And
that film came out in 1994. It was kind of at the end of that period. We had a run from about the middle 80s until about the middle 90s of these sort of Vietnam, reflective Vietnam films.
Good point. Yes.
And you know, and some were better than others, but all of them most of them had at the center of them some sort of a Vietnam vet who was sort of emotionally damaged from that war and how it all sort of played out in their family. Some of them took us into the war. Some of them took place here, but the war was sort of present. This was one of those.
We got Sammy Davis Jr. again, although it's not his film. He's a supporting actor in this, in Anna Lucasta. Basically, I think this is Eartha Kitt's film. Eartha Kitt, you know, just kills it in this movie. And you forget what a great actress she was. A lot of people just grew up with her, knowing her as the other Catwoman on Batman when Julie Newmar had something else to do. But, you know, Eartha Kitt, amazing singer and an unbelievably good actress when she acted. And this is a fantastic drama. Beautifully made, 1958. And she plays a woman of the street, but boy, does she play it, you know, with like all kinds of sort of feminist aplomb, and she chews it up beautifully. Yeah. Sammy Davis Jr.
I always thought of Eartha as kind of like the Betty Davis, the sort of black Betty Davis.
She sure was.
Of that. She didn't take no crap from nobody.
That's it.
When she did that sort of drama.
That's it. Anyway, it's one of the most brutal depictions and commentaries on prostitution you will ever see in a movie, and Eartha just nails it. Steven Soderbergh's The Underneath, which is a remake of an old noir. I love this movie.
This movie, when it came out, we both went bananas for this movie.
I know, 1995. We saw this at the same screening.
Oh, we did.
We did. I remember you and Bridget and Christy and me, we were all there. We were all there at the same screening. And I remember we all went nuts for it afterwards. It just, you know, it's one of Soderbergh's best, and it's so underrated. But this was we saw it at the Gramercy Screening Room, which is still, it's another one there now. It's the one at 100 North Crescent in Beverly Hills. And I just think the world of this movie. I think it's so smart. Peter Gallagher is so good. It's just a really sharp noir. And it's like the perfect Soderbergh film in so many ways. So good. Anyway, it has audio commentary by film critic Peter Tonguette and a trailer. And Kid Stays in the Picture. Tim, remember Kid Stays in the Picture?
Look, again, Robert Evans, who we both met and interviewed and chit-chatted with over the course of many years. And Robert Evans never stopped being Robert Evans.
True.
And he had these great stories. You know, I look, I don't know how many things Robert Evans said to me over the many years that I interviewed him here and there were true. But the stories were always fantastic. Because Robert Evans would tell me a story, you know, and then you see Robert Evans, he'd tell you the same story and would have a completely opposite ending. And I'm like, wait a minute. The last time you told me that story, it ended in a completely different way. But what the heck? It doesn't make any difference. Robert Evans.
Well, Robert Evans in The Kid Stays in the Picture, based on his book, as he says early on, it's a beautifully made documentary, really, really good. But as he says early on, there are only three sides to any story: your story, my story, and the truth. And boy, that is it. That's what it's all about.
I cannot believe that was 2002, man, that
I
doc came
know.
out. That's just crazy.
What a life. I mean, what an amazing life.
He was an actor. He started as an actor. He was, unfortunately, and this is sort of ironic, he was actually too handsome.
Yeah.
He wasn't that great of an actor either, but he was also just too good looking. He was distracting on screen. And he sort of played his good looks. So, fortunately, he knew to get out of that business right away and sort of worked his way over into the other side. Ran studios. What did he run? Did he run Paramount? Was Paramount the studio?
It was Paramount. It's Paramount. He was a major figure in The Godfather, which is all over this movie. But yeah. So Michael Winner and Oliver Reed made 6 films together, and we got 2 of them here from 1964 and 1969. The first one is The System, which is this really smart comedy. Oliver Reed, just such an amazing face. So this is one of those great British films from the early 60s. And Nicholas Roeg was the cinematographer on this. This is made right about the same time as Mask of the Red Death, right after he was fired by David Lean from shooting Dr. Zhivago. So he went on to do other really interesting things. So it's very interestingly shot, very smartly shot. That's The System, which has an audio commentary on it that is not bad. And then we also have Hannibal Brooks, which has Oliver Reed and Michael J. Pollard. There's a weird pairing. Michael J. Pollard freaks me out in everything that he's in. I don't know why. Beautiful score by Francis Lyon, this one. And this is just a World War II adventure film. It's got, it's fun and funny, and Oliver Reed plays well, I don't want to tell you. There's an animal aspect to this. Yeah. So, and I don't want to give anything away. If you basically, it's prisoners of war and an animal, and a fun adventure that would have been totally different in the hands of Disney, and I'll just leave it at that. But it's worth checking out. Then we got 3 George Papard movies. The Groundstar Conspiracy, which is really, really pretty cool movie, kind of a classic 1972 era spy-ish thriller with a little bit of kind of pseudo sci-fi stuff to it. A lot of that stuff was going on in the early 70s, usually with Charlton Heston starring in it. But this one has George Papard, who's kind of like a second-tier Charlton Heston, and not a bad one.
The very first film that I worked on in a sort of legitimate way was at ITC, Sir Lou Grade's company here, and the film was a George Papard film called The Night of the Fox. It was this TV movie. And George played these 2 characters there. Then I worked in the post department on that movie. And George, I think George made a couple of more films before he checked out. So I got the chance to work on the George Papard film.
Well, that's great.
It's pretty cool.
The other 2 here are just kind of straightforward actioners. One of them is John Gillerman directing him with a whole bunch of other people in PJ, which probably should have been a Burt Reynolds movie, but it's fine. Or it should have been? It should have been a Steve McQueen movie. That's fine. And then Newman's Law, which should have been the Burt Reynolds movie, co-starring Roger Robinson and directed by Richard Heffron, who also did a lot of these kinds of movies at the time. And that's from 1974. So, George Papard, he got everybody else's hand-me-downs, but that's okay. And then the last 4 kinos here before we kind of move on to something else. Jack Palance and Eddie Albert in Attack, directed by the great Robert Aldrich, who directed all of these movies that I'm going to talk about right now. This is a Battle of the Bulge movie, basically, kind of straightforward. Eddie Albert is great. Jack Palance is great. It's Battle of the Bulge. What do you want? Burt Lancaster in Apache, absolutely ridiculous, but it's Robert Aldrich, so it's fine. But you know what? Burt Lancaster ain't no Native American. I don't care.
No,
I don't care.
Even with that tan.
That tan, the makeup, the headband, the whole deal. It is just, in this day and age, you look back on that and you're like, good effort, but I'm not buying it. It just ain't happening. But still, it's Robert Aldrich, so it's worth checking out. And, he always directs the hell out of this stuff. And then still keeping in the Western end of things, we got a John Ford film and a Raoul Walsh film. The Raoul Walsh film is The World in His Arms with Anthony Quinn and kind of holding the fort down. Gregory Peck and Ann Blythe are the main stars of this. This was made in 1952. Kind of an all-around general swashbuckler made by a guy who primarily was known for his work on Westerns. And then John Ford, this is the one I want to give a little bit more attention to. John Ford in 1917 directed a movie called Straight Shooting. And John Ford, of course, in the silent era was plying his trade. He was not one of the great all-time silent filmmakers. He became one of the great sound era filmmakers. And you kind of understand it's a really interesting trajectory when you look at 1917, when everybody is paying attention to, the D.W. Griffiths and the Cecil B. DeMilles and Chaplin and Keaton and whoever else. And, John Ford is kind of living in all those shadows. And when you look at this, you become very aware of the fact that you're looking at a guy who is not going to be a great silent filmmaker, but who is going to take all of these skills and sensibilities and he's going to bring them into the next era, and he's going to blow up. And you can see John Ford really, really turning into something here. It is now looked at as a landmark Western for sure. He is not even credited in the film as John Ford. He's credited as Jack Ford. So, but Harry Carey would go on to be a big figure in sound westerns as well, and it's quite an interesting film. Straight Shooting from 1917, really, really worth checking out. Our good friend and longtime colleague Joe McBride does the audio commentary because he wrote a John Ford biography, so he knows his material inside out. And there's some other interesting little featurettes on here too.
Wicked.
So we got a few minutes left. What should we turn to, Tim?
There were a couple of other foreign films that I thought were kind of interesting.
Cool.
They are Song Without a Name being one of them, which is sort of beautiful Mexican black and white. I think it's a Mexican film in black and white. It's about this couple, this young woman, and she has this daughter. And she goes to this health clinic, and they take her daughter away. They kidnap her daughter. It's a fake health clinic, and sort of disappears. And we follow her on this sort of really desperate sort of like a search for her daughter. She gets involved with this journalist who helps her in this. And it's just stark. It's in black and white. It's extremely moving and powerful film. I thought that was sort of like a deeply, deeply powerful film. Song Without a Name, out of Mexico. I love that. And Bamako.
It's such a good film. Yeah, Bamako.
It's a beautiful, beautiful film. Mostly takes place in that courtyard, in that housing, that big sort of house where all of these African. A young woman, she's a singer at a nightclub. She's married. There's all kinds of stuff going on, and they put the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, in this courtyard. They set up this sort of court, and all of these people come and we hear their grievances, and it's all it has nothing to do with anything. It won't affect anything, but it's this thing that we get to watch as we are engaged with this couple, these families, and the things they're talking about. Great 2006 film, Bamako.
By the great Malian filmmaker Abdurrahmane Sissoko, by the way, who is sort of the dean of, he's like the Truffaut of African cinema today. Really, it's an extraordinary filmmaker. And this was in competition in Cannes, I believe. He got
2006, 5, something like that.
Yeah. On the foreign front, we also have the Audition, which I thought was a really, really interesting film. This is a German film about kind of a very troubled violin teacher at this high school, and she has one student who is kind of underperforming, and she makes it almost her obsessive job to bring him to his potential, and it's all of the tangents to that, because she's got a lot going on in her life. She's not a great family life. She's having an affair with one of the other teachers. Like, there's a lot that's going on, and so her fixation on this student isn't just a teacher's fixation on a student. It's sort of it dovetails out of all of this other stuff that's going on in her life, and I think this is a more effective look at this kind of a psychology than something like the Piano Teacher, which I think has some great stuff in it. Don't get me wrong, but it's a pretty sick and twisted movie. So this is the Audition, really interesting German film from Strand.
I loved a Mambo Man. which is set in Cuba. It's this really, really wicked movie. So look at this. It's a look at this guy. And you sort of imagine that a lot of folks in Cuba, because of the constraints of trade and whatnot, have to do this stuff. And he has like 10,000 jobs. He's kind of an operator. He's a farmer. He's a music promoter. He does all kinds of things to try to make stuff happen. And as a music promoter, he's engaged with some of the most famous musicians in Cuba. And he pulls together these little concerts for tourists. And this farm is in trouble and going on under. And he tries to pull together this concert that'll involve both his work as a farmer and his work as a music promoter. And it's just really a sort of interesting look at the things that folks have to do. While in a certain sort of way, doing it all sort of jubilantly, happily, with jubilation, we'll put it that way. Despite the fact that these sort of hardships and whatnot that the government causes, that the trade war causes, make everything so hard. Things that should be simple are so hard, but he does what he can anyway. There's a lot of fantastic music in this film, a beautiful, beautiful scenery. It's a lovely sort of snapshot of what Cuban life is like, and the music that comes from it. Good music, Mambo Man.
It is a good movie. It's a very, very good movie. I am also quite fond of Night Shift, the new Anne Fontaine film. I'm a huge fan of Anne Fontaine. I think she's one of the best French filmmakers currently working. She's just absolutely amazing. This is from Icarus. Although I have to say that there is some bias here because Omar Sy is in this, and Omar Sy was in our Oscar shortlisted short. Omar is a very, very good friend of our director, Brand Anderson. I've been at Disneyland with Omar Sy and his family. I just want to say that. Nicest guy in the world too. And a huge hit right now on Netflix because his French series, it just became the biggest all time Netflix series ever, which is a fascinating thing, wonderful thing for him. But he is a supporting figure primarily in this. This is a Virginie Efira is kind of the main character here, and she and Omar Sy and Gregory Gadebois are these Parisian police officers who are just trying to basically hold together all of the crap that they deal with every day and keep their lives stable. And one evening, there's an incident with a migrant, and it forces them to sort of rethink everything that they've been led to believe and do. And it's one of those cop job dilemma dramas, and it's really, really well done. It's not typical of the stuff that Anne Fontaine usually does. She's period films and dramas, and not necessarily stuff that's very gritty and police driven. So she's stretching a little bit here, and good on her. She's kind of channeling herself through Virginie Efira, and who's just really incredibly good in this thing. It's a really, really sharp police, what they call a policier in France. So Night Shift, despite all of my conflicts of interest, I'm going to recommend Night Shift. I think it's a really, really good film.
A real hell of a procedural. It really, really is. My stupid dog. Excuse me.
My dog's stupid. My dog's stupid.
My dog's stupid. My dog's stupid. This is what they named the dog in the movie. Ivana Tal film, and it's really, really just funny. Although it's about a guy who's going through a bit of a midlife crisis, and kids and all of this stuff, and this big stupid dog comes to his house, and the whole family can't stand the dog, and they're constantly trying to kick the dog out. But the dog keeps coming back, and you can sort of imagine sort of where it goes. And the dog is the star of the movie, and steals the whole daggum thing. It's based on the John Fonte novel. I used to read a lot of John Fonte. Anyway, My Dog's Stupid. It's just really, really, really austere.
And Charlotte Gainsbourg, of course, is in the film because she and Yvonne Attal are married, and all the Yvonne Attal movies that he does with his wife, with Charlotte, I think are consistently sharp and funny and very smart. I just love them all. Got a couple of criterions real quickly to make mention of. We were talking about Sissako previously. There would be no Abdurrahmane Sissako if there had not been an Ousmane Sembene before him. That's where African cinema really begins. Simbene is the great master of African cinema. And this is Mandabi from 1968, which is just an absolutely extraordinary masterpiece. This is Simbene's second feature, and it is the first ever film. This is significant. This is the first ever film that was filmed in an actual original native African language. Until 1968, nobody had made a film in an African language. So it is significant, and you really, really do need to check this out. This is just an absolutely wonderful allegory about a young Senegalese man who receives, let's say, he receives some money from someone in Paris. And it is the course of that transaction that winds up sort of creating a fascinating allegory about, let's say, culture and colonialism and just modernity and a whole lot of other things that are all really fascinatingly wrapped up in this. And apparently this was adapted from his own novella. I didn't know that previously. Simbene had written a novella and he adapted this from that. And it's actually surprisingly funny at the same time. He kind of finds a lot of the reasons that we create our own problems in life, especially problems related to money. He finds it absurdist and unnecessary. And, it's a beautiful film. Mandabi, loads of extras on this thing, including a great short film from 1970 that Simbene made that is also one of the best short films I think I've ever seen. And then The Parallax View. Alan Pakula's film with Warren Beatty is out on Blu-ray from Criterion, 1974. It's kind of a classic Pakula film. I haven't watched this since I was a kid, I don't think. Alex Cox shows up in a comment with an introduction again, not a commentary, an introduction. He did commentaries on the others. There's also a thing on Gordon Willis as a cinematographer featuring an interview from 2004. But this is basically a kind of a dry run for All the President's Men. Would you say that, Tim?
Oh yeah, conspiracies, assassinations, corporate conspiracies, politics, the whole shebang.
It feels like he's sharpening his claws to get into that. Anyway, it's a good film. I think I'm a little surprised that it got a Criterion treatment, but I'm glad that it did. And I want to wrap out really quickly, just for laughs, with a film that I know you're going to get a kick out of. The Barbarians with the Barbarian brothers. This is. You remember this thing?
Oh yeah, those brothers. Those brothers are in a movie that I wrote a long time ago.
Oh, really?
In the early 90s, when I used to do all that stuff for Peter Mahari and all the PM Entertainment and all that kind of. Also, I would rewrite all these terrible movies, and those brothers are in more than one, actually.
So this is from 1987, and basically what was happening, it's just such a, Michael Berryman is in this thing too, as with a horn on his head, because he's a freaky looking guy. But here's the thing. So after Arnold Schwarzenegger hit it big with Conan and everything else, the Barbarian brothers, who are a couple of weightlifters that you could see here just about every day down in Venice Beach, like they were not. Oh yeah, they were all over the place. I saw these guys
Peter and David Paul. That's who they are.
Yeah.
The Paul brothers.
The Paul brothers. Yeah. I mean, these guys were all over LA. They were not like hard to find. I mean, I saw them everywhere. I'd see them at the restaurant, see them at the market. I'd see them on the beach, and you can't miss them, right? Because they're like 5'7" wide and like 5'8" tall. Yeah. They're just like squares. Yeah. I mean, and they would walk around wearing those 80s style kind of like cut off male halter top, jerseys that look unbelievably feminine, unless it's a guy with this many muscles wearing it. And then it's like, I dare you to make fun of me. I dare you to make fun of me for wearing this, because I will break you in two. I always love that. It's like, isn't that what all the women wore in Flashdance? Like that little, and I'm not going to make fun, not making fun. You can pull it off. You got the muscles. Anyway, this is just ridiculous. It's a ridiculous movie that is just straight up, hey, 2 Conans is better than 1. That's all it is. It's a Conan the Barbarian ripoff with the Paul brothers, the Barbarian brothers, and they never really had much of a film career after that. But boy, is this a fascinating '80s artifact. The Barbarians.
Yeah,
so much fun.
They would walk around like that, and they were like Sylvester Stallone short, but they always shot them from real low to make them look like they were way bigger than they actually were.
I saw them once at, what was it? It was a fast food place. I'm trying to remember what it was. It's one of those fast food places that doesn't exist anymore that served salads. It was like you know what I mean? It was like you go on the buffet line. You're like, this is just a whole 9 different varieties of lettuce with bacon bits. Why am I paying $15 for this? And I saw them at one of those places, and you walk in and you see them. You're like, those dudes are big. And as you walk closer to them, you go, those dudes are short. And then I'm next to them in the line, and I'm like, yeah, I can take these guys. Nah, I couldn't take these guys because they were short. It's hilarious, but I'm like towering over them. But then I realize that their biceps are bigger than my waist, and anyway.
Amazing.
Anyway, all right, that's it for this week. We hope no more people die this week. It's been bad the last few weeks. It's been bad, but it looks like we're getting daylight on the pandemic. Some teachers are coming back to school. Cities are starting to open a little bit more, so vaccines getting out there. We hope you're all well. And we will see. Well,
we will be doing the film week. The big.
Oh, yeah.
Film week. Yeah, we're going to be doing it virtually, but it'll give more people, including this audience, an opportunity to participate, which they wouldn't usually. When it's a live show down at the Ace, so it'll be online. Oh, I forget the date. I'm so terrible at promotion.
Yeah, but it's going to be April, March, early April. I think it is. I think it's like the first
Sunday. One of those Sundays. Yeah.
We will plug that on the next show, but we've got time. Oscar nominations don't come out until March 5th, and then the Oscars are like April 28th. It's almost 2 months. It's a little bit like the way it used to be. Remember when the Oscars were late March? So,
we finished our thing for Alaska so long ago. I don't know, man. I just in some ways I feel like maybe there's different back. But whatever, it is what it is.
Indeed. All right. Well, everybody, we will see you next week.